If I were to tell you that I watched a wheelchair-bound woman get physically healed in an instant and run across the ballroom, would you believe me? What if I said that I had experiences with fifth-dimensional beings and I saw myself turn into one of them? What would you think if I told you that I invited so much high vibrational electric energy inside of my body that I was viscerally shaking for hours as my nervous system was attuning to it? And don't worry, it didn't hurt or scare me. So what exactly happened at Dr. Joe Dispenza's week-long advanced retreat, and how the hell did I get here talking about these experiences? That's what we're going to be diving into in today's episode, and from the sound of it, get ready to get weird, my friends, because I'm already an outside thinker, and if this week blew me away, you know I've got some stories to tell. Welcome to another episode of Shattering Reality. I am your host, Sabrina Weibel, and on this podcast, we break through the common limitations of modern reality and expand your thinking as we delve into topics of quantum physics, spirituality, channeling, and much more. Nothing is off the table here as we work to uncover human behavior and the secret powers of the mind and universe through discussing esoteric and sometimes controversial topics. In today's episode, I give full disclosure on my spiritual experiences from this event, and there is so much I cannot say out of respect for Dr. Joe and his team, and because of literal copyright infringement, but I will share my personal experiences from Dr. Joe Dispenza's week-long advanced retreat that utterly shattered my own reality and transformed my life in a single week, and that is far from an understatement. So I'll share my experiences in a linear format as I experience them myself, so you can walk through them with me, starting from day 1 and ending with day 7. Now, the week started off slow for me personally, but the experiences only continued to progress and get even crazier that blew my mind again and again and put me in awe. So whether you're interested in going to an event and wondering how it will be like, or you're just interested in hearing about my own experience, be sure to stay until the end if you want to hear the best this episode has to offer. And with that being said, let's get into it. Okay, since I'm going in linear fashion, my experiences of this event actually started about 6 months prior to even buying the ticket. About 6 months before even buying the ticket for this event, I wake up out of sleep for the next day, and I'm in that like half awake, half asleep state where you're kind of confused on what year you're even in. And I just see the words, my eyes are closed, and I see the words encephalon in all caps run across my mind in my dream, almost like a teleprompter, and it just kept running across the screen in my mind again and again, and I'm half asleep, and I'm like, what even is encephalon? Is that like an instrument or something? Like, what even is this? But it felt so profound. And I even messaged my friends later that day and was like, isn't this so weird? It felt so important for some reason. And they were like, oh, that is weird. Then about a few days later, I get an email pop up in my inbox, and it says, Encephalon Events. Registration is open for Dr. Joe Dispenza's retreats. And I was like, no freaking way. I have to go. And the next retreat that was open was already sold out. And so I was like, whichever one opens up next that I'm able to go to, I will go to. It ended up being November of 2023's week-long retreat in Orlando, Florida. And I will also preface, before I talk about my week itself, to say that the entire week, I barely got any sleep, okay? I'm talking a good 4 hours of sleep a night, and each day felt like a lifetime in the best way possible. So some of the events might be a little mixed up with the timing, because as I was writing this out, Wednesday felt like Thursday, and Friday felt like Tuesday, and my days felt all mixed up. But the experiences were so vivid in my mind, I wrote them in as much linear fashion as I remembered them to be. So starting with day 1, we really don't get much details of what we're even doing in the event. I just knew I had a dream, encephalon dream, and I needed to be there. I don't even know why I need to be there. I'm thinking, oh, it'll probably benefit myself, my business, like I'm sure I'll learn really interesting things because I love learning about this stuff. And it's held at Gaylord Resort. I don't know if any of you have been to Gaylord. I had not been. Apparently there are these big resorts, and there's even like a jungle atrium in the middle of it, like an atrium that has a jungle, like with alligators, a stream, palm trees. And so I'm walking through this atrium like, whoa, like what? And I get there, And all of us are like, what are we even doing? Like, we know that we have to be here at this time, but there's no schedule. We don't know what time we're leaving. We don't know what time we're supposed to be here tomorrow. And Dr. Joe he told his team, Dr. Joe's team is telling us, oh, Dr. Joe doesn't run by time because time doesn't exist. And we're like, what is this? And so that's how the week starts. And day one, when we started the event, he prepped us for the week and it was great. And I barely slept the night before because I was so excited. He gave very vague instructions on the week ahead. Everything was left to the unknown, which is how he works. And it honestly was really great like that. He explained that some of the meditations, people were going to have really good and intense experiences from them. They might have some outbursts or say things and to just leave them be. And so when he says this, I'm like, okay, this is about to be interesting. So day one was just prep work. Day two, we go in and we start with the meditations. We did about 35 hours of meditation the entire week. And honestly, it's a disgrace to call his meditations because we are doing things. This is not just like a simple calm lady voice of let yourself feel good, or this isn't just like a silent meditation. No, we are moving energy. We are tapping into powerful frequencies and inviting them in. We are making neurological and biological shifts that you can feel viscerally between your hands and your bones. So yes, technically these are called meditations, but I feel like it's a disgrace to call it meditations. So we get into the meditations. We start the first meditation of the day, and he guides us through the specific type of breath. Now, this breath that we practice this entire week, which is so powerful, moves your cerebral spinal fluid, which is the fluid that is inside of your spine. And we move this from the base of your spine all the way up to your pineal gland in the brain, activating it, causing you to strengthen your electromagnetic field that's around you at all times. It's like our human magnet. It causes it to strengthen this, and which allows us to attract what we want faster. And it's like taking the energy that's used to create a baby, and it's taking that energy, moving it all the way up to the pineal gland, creating these high levels of coherent gamma brainwaves, which basically puts you into states of bliss, euphoria, and like a super conscious. So this breath is an important piece to my experiences this week because you start to have some pretty mystical experiences when you enter that high frequency brainwave state. So we practice this breath, and I'm not going to lie, it's hard for me. It's so much to think about. I'm feeling so technical and logical about it. And we try it in a meditation, and I'm just way overthinking it. I'm like, I'm going to have to get some getting used to this. And we go on break, we come back to the meditation, and we try again and practice this breath. And we are sitting like sardines, shoulder to shoulder. It was a very nice resort, but there were just so many people in the room. It was almost, like I said, I think I said already, like almost 2,000 people. And so we're sitting like sardines, shoulder to shoulder. The chairs are literally linked together. And we do this breath again. We practice this breath again. And I start to see, like, with my eyes are closed and in my mind's eye, I start to see like these geometric shapes come up. And it came up in such an instant. And I thought to myself, I had an active thought in my brain of, oh, it's happening. And then it went away. Just like that, it went away. And I'm like, man, not anymore. Now, the woman to my right, she was this Indian woman that I ended up being friends with. And I can hear her having an experience. She's probably in her maybe like early 40s, if I had to guess. And I can hear her having an experience. Oh, that's like her having her experience, and her shoulders rubbing against mine. And then the woman to my left, she's this Colombian woman, and I'd say she's about a similar age. And I feel her moving, and she like instantly goes into the spiritual experience. And she is like, ah! In her Colombian accent, she's going, angels, angels. And I opened my eyes at first because I'm like, whoa, I was like a little freaked out. And then I'm like, okay, close my eyes, get back to the meditative state. But I see her, she had like jumped out of her chair. She's out. We have like spaces in front of our chair for us to do lay down meditations later in the week. And she's like like rolling all over the floor. Then she turns to me and she's like rubbing all over me, rubbing all over my legs, rubbing all over my feet. Like, I see angels, I'm in the heavens, and her like Colombian accent. And I'm just like, what in the, I'm just trying to keep to myself, stay in my state. And afterwards, I was catching up with her, and she later told me, she was like, I couldn't even control myself. Like, I just like dropped into this dimension, and I felt like I was in heaven, and it just was so amazing. It was so beautiful. And I was thinking, like, at least you had a good time. And they actually, after we get back from break, Dr. Joe brought people on stage who were advanced in this like breath technique. And he wanted us to see what it looks like when they go through it. And they do the breath through his guidance. And it was so crazy. Their whole bodies on stage, it was maybe like 8 of them that were all involved in the event and somehow, and had obviously been to his retreats before. And they're sitting on stage doing this breath, and they start just uncontrollably shaking, it looks like. And they're like, their heads are going crazy, their bodies are going crazy, like sitting in the chair. One guy just passes out completely. Like, and there was a man standing behind them who was kind of watching over them, and he grabbed him and he made sure he didn't hurt himself. But he activated his pineal gland so much. How did Dr. Joe describe it? He described it as, when we bring that much energy to the brain, it like took the lights out to his frontal cortex or prefrontal cortex. And I'm just thinking, like, what the fuck is this shit? Like, this is wild. Like, that is the dialogue that's going on in my brain as I'm seeing these people on stage knocking themselves out by bringing so much energy into their brains, which it's not bad for you, by the way, to knock yourself out in that way. But we go over and we go to practice a third meditation that day. And all these meditations are at least like an hour and a half, if not 2 hours long. They don't feel that long, but some of them did. And we go into the third meditation, and I just felt defeated. And let me tell you, I hear a person like here and there crying from their spiritual experience. I'm over there and I'm crying in my meditation from feeling pissed off at myself, honestly. I was frustrated. I was impatient. I was in so much pain. My back started to hurt so much, like a 10 out of 10. And it was like, when you're in a meditation this long, it's like the unresolved emotions that you had felt just come up for you. And they just keep coming up for you. And I will say, as a side note, as a tip, if you want to go to a Dr. Joe event and you want to have the best experience, I will say practice meditating for like at least a few months before you go, because I'm a practiced meditator. Like, I've been meditating off and on for the past 5-6 years, but for the 6 months prior to this event, I hadn't meditated. It just wasn't a part of my routine. Like, my practices kind of like ebb and flow, and I just hadn't meditated before the event. That was a mistake on my end, because I had to go through that rough period of just having a tough time getting into the meditative state, and then also feeling these emotions come up for me so strong. And I knew I had some stress and angst in my days. Like, I'm a very high achiever, and so I can be really hard on myself at times. But facing it head on, I got to get a really good look at it, and it was tough, man. Like, I ended up walking through the jungle and the atrium of Gaylord, Ubering to my friend's place, because I'm staying at my friend's, who just so happened to move to the Orlando area a couple months prior. And she only lived like 20 minutes from the event. So I got to stay with my friend and have like slumber party vibes with her, catch up with her, see her new place, and also go to the event. So it was awesome. But I get to my friend's place and she's like, how was it? How was day 2? Like, your first full day? Like, how did everything go? And I told her, like, man, I just feel defeated. Like, I feel defeated. And she ended up telling me later, she didn't tell me this in the moment, but she ended up telling me after the end of the week. She said, yeah, when I looked at you after that day 2, you looked like you had been through it. And she said by that night, even by night 2, when I came home, she could tell I had already changed. And so all my meditations that day were not the easiest. My mind was activated, distracted, and I was overcoming a lot of impatience and frustration. And that day really humbled me. So then we go into day 3, which is Tuesday, and we have to get there at 6 a.m. The Uber took so long to get to the apartment. I ended up coming in like 15 minutes late. I'm running through Gaylord, running through the jungle in the atrium. I was 15 minutes late. I was so tired. We do a meditation. I ended up falling asleep halfway through, and which was honestly, I heard a few people snoring, so I know I wasn't the only one. But this day was another day full of tough meditations, feeling defeated, overcoming my emotions. I was able to connect a lot in my second meditation in the day, and where we connected to our future self. And it was really positive for me in the aspect of I was able to connect to my future self. And this time I was crying a lot, not out of frustration, but out of just pure love. And I was really thinking specifically about my mom and my brothers. And I realized that my main motivation for creating more abundance and wealth in my life is to financially support her and her household. And so that was a really beautiful moment for me. I was crying and crying. I'm just feeling so much love. And we go to lunch and I run into the Colombian woman who was sitting next to me the day before. And she looks at me, and I was doing my best to sit next to different people every day, because one of my favorite things about retreats is getting to know all the different people that are there. But the Colombian woman who was in the heavens the day before, she ended up finding me. She goes, "Oh my God, Sabrina, did you hear me in that last meditation?" Like in her Colombian accent. And I'm like, "I heard someone. I thought it might have been you." She said, "Oh my God, I fell out of my seat. I turned into jelly. I rolled all the way up to the stage. And Dr. Joe, he had to get the team to move me back to my seat. I'm gonna control myself." And she's just like this was just like the funniest shit to hear, because she was just such a funny character to begin with. But I'm like, I was cracking up when she told me that. And so that was honestly the basis of day 3 on Tuesday. It was pretty uneventful other than that. And the last meditation was extremely tough for me when I got home again to my friend's place. It was another day of just like feeling absolutely defeated, man. Like I felt defeated, beat up. And I did not want to talk about my day. And so then we go into day 4, and this is where it starts to get a little more interesting and a little more fun for me. I am getting better at getting into the meditative state, and we start off the day with a walking meditation outside. And this walking meditation was so unbelievably powerful for me. And we connect with our future self so deep. And like we have like our headphones on, right? With Dr. Joe's like pre-recorded meditation in our ears, and we're outside of Gaylord. So yeah, it's like there were so many employees there to make sure that we weren't bothered by the public, and to also be support to us through all of the crazy spiritual experiences we were having. But it was also funny because we were still in the public. And when I tell you these walking meditations, we did a few of them, and we'd stand there with our eyes closed. We'd be listening to the meditation. We'd start walking, right? But we're not regular walking. We're like walking in a meditative state, in like a trance. So we look like walking zombies. And then in the walking meditations, like we'll have to stop again as the audio tells us to. Sometimes we have to lay down, then we get back up, we start walking again. Some people are like dancing, some people are sprinting. Like we look crazy to the public. I'm not even gonna lie. And it's almost 2,000 people of us. And so I can only imagine what people at the resort were thinking. Like, what the hell are these people doing at 6 o'clock in the morning, walking outside, looking like zombies, laying down? What are these people doing? I can only imagine. But this walking meditation on Wednesday was so amazing. And I tapped into an energetic frequency that was so high that I felt like I had never felt so light before in my life. It was like every cell in my being was just shining this bright, bright light is as well as I could describe it. And it felt so good. And I'm walking and like, yeah, it looks like I might be looking at the trees or the road ahead, but my mind, my consciousness is in a totally different reality. I'm getting visions of myself on a boat in Utah, surrounded by my friends with my future partner. It wasn't even the scenery that really stuck with me. It was the way that I felt. And I just felt, and I will always remember this, just such an excitement for life itself. Like there was no worry about business. There was no stress about money. There was no worry or thought about anything. It was just pure excitement for life, just pure love for life. And it felt so beautiful. And I was crying, of course, of just like feeling so like there's no words for it. Just so beautiful. And it was such a special meditation for me. I was on cloud 9 afterwards. We had breakfast, we go into another teaching, and we go into our second meditation for the day. And again, this one's really tough for me. I'm distracted. My mind is not relaxed. And I end up crying again out of frustration. I just said, screw it to putting on any kind of makeup by day 3, because I was like, I'm crying every single day. Like I'm not going to keep crying my mascara off. So I'm over there roughing it and just crying out of frustration. And after we get out of the meditation, I just sit in my seat for the longest time, just trying to overcome myself and accept the situation, feel more patient with myself, because I realized these emotions of frustration and impatience and like irritation, like these were emotions that I felt every day before going to the event. And I wasn't like, I was aware of them, but I wasn't this aware of them. I was like, wow, these are really in my face right now. And I don't want to leave this retreat. I don't want to go back into my life still feeling these emotions because they don't feel good. And so I sat in my seat for the longest time after that meditation. And I was just like, I'm going to feel more patient with myself. I'm going to keep regulating myself, overcoming these emotions, letting myself feel them, work through them. And I'm going to get to this end state of feeling more patient with myself. And even like this girl stopped by and she was like, are you okay? Like that's probably how distraught I looked and I felt after that second meditation. And then we go to more teachings, more breaks, dinner. We get into the last meditation. And this one really got me. We go ahead and activate the pineal gland. And there's so many ways to say pineal. I think pineal or pineal. I say it pineal. However you say it is great. But we go into this last meditation of the night right before we get out. And again, this meditation has got to be at least 2 hours long. Specifically, the intention for this one was to tap into the frequency of the mystical and to have a mystical experience. Because when you activate the pineal gland, you really start to enter some very high frequencies that make you see some very interesting things. We go into the meditation, we activate the pineal gland, activate it again, so many times. And then he tells us to lay down. And it's like we're laying down in front of our seats and there's just enough room for us to lay down. And again, we're like sitting like sardines. So we're laying like sardines. And it's like my feet was like at the edge of the person's seat in front of me. And then my head was under my seat. And we're just so close together. And we lay down after activating the pineal gland and we're supposed to be having this mystical experience, right? And like I said also before, people keep having these random like outbursts, like a scream or a laugh or a cry. And there's this one specific woman who was in the event who kept having these random like scream outbursts, like it was really distinct. And this one woman had this scream outburst, just like a random like scream. And then another person around her just started laughing. And then more people around that person just started laughing. And then it was like a wave in a crowd. Just more and more people started laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing. Almost 2,000 people in this entire ballroom were all ended up laughing hysterically. It was the weirdest experience, craziest experience to be, weirdest, craziest energy to be in, to be laying on the floor like sardines and just to be surrounded by so much laughter. And I couldn't stop laughing. I was hysterically laughing. This man was behind me in this row behind me, and he had like the funniest laugh. You know how some guys just laugh funny? He had this like hearty, like ha 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 type, I couldn't even imitate it, laugh, and it was cracking me up. And his wife next to him is laughing, and I'm like, tears are streaming down my face. My abs are hurting. This is going on for at least 20 minutes, if not 30 minutes, if not longer. And two girls, a girl like 2 seats from him, she yells out, she's like, I just peed myself, which only made me started to laugh harder. Like it was the funniest thing that I think I had ever experienced. And eventually Dr. Joe gets on the mic and he's like, come back. You know, if you've listened to a Dr. Joe meditation, you know how his voice is. So we end up coming back to the room and I'm still laughing. I'm still like giggling under my breath. Like I can't hold it in. And after he ends us out, because this was at the very end of the night, I turn around at the man who kept making me laugh. It was him. It was his laugh that was causing me to crack up so much where my abs were hurting. I turned around and I pointed my finger and I'm like, you made me laugh so hard. And then his wife looks at me and she's like, because of your laugh, I couldn't stop laughing. And then I look at the girl 2 seats from him and I'm like, and you peed yourself. And we were all just cracking up. I ended up becoming great friends with them, which I'll get more into later. But I get home, I'm laughing, walking all the way through the jungle atrium in Gaylord. I'm laughing in the Uber ride home. I get to my friend's place and I tell her about my day, and I'm hysterically on the floor, abs are hurting, in my PJs, tears streaming down my face, laughing, talking about the event. And she goes to bed. I end up laying down on the air mattress in her living room. And I kid you not, we got out of that event at like 7 p.m. I was laughing until midnight. I felt like I was on shrooms. Like when we got out of the event, because it was in November, and they were practicing this Christmas event. And so they had this light show going on, and you could see the light show on the ceiling as they're practicing for this Christmas event that they have. And a group of us from the event were walking through the atrium as they're practicing this, and we all just like grouped together, staring at the lights in the ceiling, like, whoa, like that's so pretty, like so beautiful, so cool. Like I can't speak for them, but I felt like I was on shrooms. And I'm looking at the alligators like deep in their eyes, and I'm like, whoa, like it was just so hard to sleep that night. I had so much energy. And so then we go into day 5. This is Thursday. We start off with another walking meditation. And this meditation was incredible. It was amazing. My body felt so light again. And it was funny because I ran into a man afterwards that I became friends with, and he was like, oh, how's the meditation for you? And I was like, oh, so good. You know, I'm talking to him about it. I'm like, how was it for you? He said, great. Because may I mind you, we're doing these meditations outside of Gaylord, the resort. And he's like, I was mid-meditation, standing up and he's this grown-ass man, like probably in his 40s. And he said that he was standing there crying his eyes out. And he opened his eyes to go back into the walking meditation, and he sees himself looking at like a hotel room window, and there's someone in the window just staring at him. And he's like, oh, that's great. Someone's just staring at me, bawling my eyes out. Like that was just the funniest experiences that people were having. And this ended up being such a beautiful, beautiful day. So such a fun day. So I end up the same group that I was pointing at and blaming for making me laugh so hard the night before. They were all hanging out together, and the same man that was making me hysterically laugh, I ended up becoming good friends with him, and I'm just going to give him a fake name. We're going to call him Ethan, okay? And like I said, we are tapping into such high energetic frequencies. And when our bodies start to attune to these higher frequencies, our nervous system acts like a tuning fork, and it causes our body to start like viscerally shaking, like as if it were vibrating, like physically vibrating. And so I see Ethan, and he is like, not even in meditation shaking. He is like walking wide awake, and his body is vibrating. And I'm like, oh my God, like he is having experiences. Like he is tapping into these high frequencies. And this is on, what is it? Day five. He was telling me, okay, about the meditation from the night before. And I was laughing with them about how funny it was and how much they were making me laugh. And he was like, no, you don't understand. Like I was in another dimension. I saw these like blue beings that I was a part of their society. And I was actually like their leader, and they're called Arcturians. And so we start talking about this species of these blue beings called Arcturians. And they're from a fifth dimensional place called Arcturus. And I'm myself, if you know me personally, I'm always like an open-minded person, but also very skeptical at the same time. Like I take everything with a grain of salt, and I wait until I have my own experiences, or I have some kind of like evidence or something more to like back it up. And this isn't to say that I'm not believing him, but I'm just like, oh wow, like that's interesting, right? And he was saying how, yes, he's a part of this fifth dimensional being society, and how many people at the event were actually members of the society. And the woman who peed herself, he was like, she's a part of this society. She's like a valued member of society. He like saw it in his experience. And as he's describing this species, you would call it, it flashed me back to about maybe 8 months prior, and I was in like an intense breathwork session. So if you're not familiar with breathwork, it's where you do these breathing patterns that over oxygenates your body, which causes like a detox and like a cleansing. And you can also have mystical experiences during breathwork as well. And for this breathwork session specifically that I had a flashback of, the intention was to meet your spirit guides. And I remember seeing like in the breathwork session, meeting spirit guides. I remember seeing like a few human looking spirit guides, and I talk to them and they walk away. And then I remember seeing this one blue being, spirit guide, whatever it was, come up. And the best way I could describe it was, closest thing I could describe it to is like an avatar. It looked similar, it had really long limbs, and she looked at me and she moved her arms like a spaghetti noodle, like a wave. And in the breathwork session, like 8 months prior, right, I'm seeing this in my mind's eye, and she's moving her arms like a wave, and she's like, you need to be more like this. And I'm now looking back, I'm realizing that she was probably telling me that I needed to tap more into like my fun side and let loose and just have more fun in life. But during the breathwork session, during this past time, I remember thinking in my head, like, what is this? Who is this? Like, am I just making this up in my mind? Like, what even is this? And I saw her go into, after she did the little arm noodle thing and told me I needed to be more like that, she went into this, it looked like almost like driftwood as like a doorway into this like ocean water. And she walked into the ocean and she went away. And that was my experience in my breathwork session about 8 or 9 months prior. And when Ethan is talking about these blue people and Arcturus and what they're about, it flashed me back to that. And I was like, whoa, like I forgot I even had that experience. I didn't even know what to think about it. So I just started to describe them to him. And he looked at me with like such like passion in his eyes. And he's like, yes, that's them. That's them. And his wife, when I described it to the group, his wife was like, that arm thing, he keeps doing that arm thing. And I was like, okay, like if this is truly the being that came through in my breathwork session 8 to 9 months prior that I had absolutely no explanation for, like it would, like I can see 2 and 2 being put together because I can't explain how that came up in my breathwork session that time ago. And there are a lot of parallels here. And when I was telling him this, he was looking at me, he said, yes, that means like you're one of them. And I was still thinking in my head, right? Like I said, open-minded, but skeptical. I'm thinking in my head, maybe not, but I mean, we'll see, I guess we'll see. And he said, I'm going to tell them to come to you. And I'm thinking in my head, I don't know if I'm ready for all that, but I'm not going to tell him no. So I just said, okay, and ended up looking them up later. And apparently I looked it up online, and apparently it's a thing. Other people have talked about them, and they're a very loving and healing species. And apparently they are this 5th dimensional species that come to Earth to help us bring us to a higher frequency. Okay, and I'm just letting you know what I was experiencing there. He was telling me also that he could see them standing around the room, like protecting the room, because they're a protective species. They're like 10 to 12-ish feet tall. They were standing like pillars in the room, and he said that their spaceship is like outside and in the lake by the resort, like it's in the water and the like out by the resort. And that's where they're coming from, but they're here to watch over everyone in the event and to help with the event. So anyway, we go into another meditation, and Ethan is shaking and vibrating and trembling just like so much that he could barely stand. He could barely talk. And in the meditations, he's just like shaking so much. He like jumps out of his chair doing like origami type behavior on the floor in front of his seat. And this other meditation that we get into that day, I don't remember exactly the intention or the type of meditation we were doing. I just know that I connected to my future self again, and I tapped back into this beautiful, beautiful feeling. And I was getting visuals of my future that I will keep to myself for now, but I was seeing the impact that I am going to be making in the world. And I was doing my best to not scream because I was so excited. The feeling of so much excitement was just coursing through my veins in this meditation. I was trying so hard not to disturb the people around me. I was trying so hard not to scream, like holding in my like excitement. And I'm in my chair and I'm trying to keep my arms to myself, but my arm is up and I'm pumping my fist like in circles, and I'm just thinking in my head, screaming in my head, like, yes, 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 like, let's fucking go. And I'm like, as people are having their spiritual experiences, meeting their gods, I'm over there pumping my fist and saying, let's fucking go. Trying not to disturb the people around me. And it was a beautiful, beautiful experience being able to get those visuals of the impact that I'm making. It just brings so much, even more drive into what I'm doing and my mission in life. And I don't remember if this was the same meditation or a different meditation, but we go into a trance where we activate our pineal gland. And this is where, for the first time, I experience my own body start to shake. I saw Ethan's body shaking, and I was like, oh, well, I saw a couple people here and there, not too many though, shaking. And during this meditation, we're laying on the floor. Are we laying on the floor? During this meditation, I just feel my body, and I'm not controlling it. Like, it's one thing seeing other people, it's one thing hearing about it, but it's another thing you experiencing it yourself, because there's no denying it when you're experiencing it yourself. There's no questioning, oh, are these people making it up? Or these people just, no, you're experiencing it yourself, and you're like, whoa, I'm having this experience. My whole body's shaking, and I'm really trying hard not to disturb the other women on either side of me. Also trying not to laugh because my body is still in this, like, when I get into that meditative state, it was still wanting to laugh from the night before. So started to experience the shakes. And these are good. Like, I'm not scared, I'm not worried. Like, it's not like a scary shaking. Like, you feel calm in your mind. But go to dinner, maybe. I think we go to dinner, have more teachings, and we start to do these healing meditations. So we were learning that the methods that we were practicing caused a lot of healing in our bodies, right? It brings our bodies to the state of quote unquote coherence. When we enter these brainwave states, when we enter these high brainwave states, when we activate these different energy centers in our body and we work to align them and bring energy to them and balance these energy centers, these, what Dr. Joe likes to call them, our brains of our organs. We have like these bundles of nerves throughout our bodies that are like the brains to different organs. While we're doing all of this, we're bringing healing and balance to our body. Our brain is finally starting to communicate to all the different parts of the brain. Your brain is then communicating to your different organs. You're having healthy communication now, where in most people in our society, our brains, the parts of our brain are not communicating to each other, and the parts of our bodies and our organs are not communicating effectively to the other parts of our body, causing all of these diseases. Because basically our body's signals to our organs are out of whack. So we learn that we can direct this very coherent healing energy towards other people. And there are studies behind this. I won't go into them, but this is what we're doing in the last meditation of day 5. And we do our first coherence healing meditation on these people who actually are participants of the retreat. And I noticed this when I applied for the retreat. I saw on the application, it said, "Are you looking for physical healing?" And I was like, why is it asking me that? Like, no. I click, and I realized that some people go to the event specifically for physical healing because they hear that it's a thing that happens a lot there. And so they choose who the quote unquote healies are going to be before we get into the event. And so we go into this coherence healing meditation, and we start off by standing outside of the ballroom while the healies are inside getting their things together. And we have these speakers around us of a pre-recorded Dr. Joe Dispenza of him getting us into the right brainwave state, activating this state. And he says specifically, like, we're activating the healer in you. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And we get in there, and it was so crazy as we're activating this energy, and we move energy to different centers, and we move it down from our shoulders into our hands. And my hands, as we're activating this energy, my hands and the bottoms of my feet were tingling so much. And I was like, whoa, like, I don't think I have felt this before. Like, this amount of energy in my extremities. And the teachings talk about, like, when energy makes its way through your body and goes down your extremities, like, it's normal to feel that. And so then we're guided in there, and the healies are like laying on the floor, and there are about 8 seats, 4 seats on either side of them. So they're set up as like little boxes all around the ballroom. They rearranged all the seats like this. So there would be a healie in the middle, 4 seats on either side, and about 6 to 8 people, quote unquote healers, to each quote unquote healie. So we go in there and we go to activate the energy, bring the energy down. I won't get into the details of it, but we direct this energy towards the healie, towards the person. And we direct it to this man, the man that I was a part of the group for. It was this older man. He was the healie, and we're gathered around him, and we're activating this energy, and I'm practicing it. I'm feeling it, and I'm feeling like it's working. And it's funny because midway through the healing session, I knew there was some energetic connection there, because I felt the energy coursing through my body, but also the man who was laying there, I just start randomly laughing because we have like these random emotional outbursts when you're in these states. I just start randomly laughing. And the same exact time, the Healy starts laughing too. And I was like, oh yeah, like we're connected right now. And after we get out, we make eye contact, me and this older man. And we just, once we look at each other, I think I'm the first person he looks at when he opens his eyes. And we just start bawling our eyes out at the same time. Like, I don't even know what exactly I was feeling. I just saw his eyes and I just started bawling. And then the whole group, there were 7 of us specifically for this man, and we're all just ended up just crying together. And it was so beautiful. And I don't specifically know what his condition was. I didn't ask him, but he ended up standing up out of his chair, and he felt like he felt good. And it was beautiful. And this was the first coherent session. I feel like we were all kind of practicing at this point. And I go home, and as I'm walking out of Gaylord, actually, I stop, and a couple that knows me that I met prior, they stopped me, and one of the guys was telling me, he was like, you need to make sure you ground to like release any energy that you might have picked up on. And so later when I got home to my friend's place, I found this little patch of mulch outside of her apartment complex, and I stood there in the rain late at night with my umbrella, just grounding it. I could feel the energy from my body leaving from my left leg specifically and going into the ground. I was like, whoa, like that's weird. Because the old man we were healing, I had seen him previously, and he's in a wheelchair. And again, I don't know specifically his condition, but I felt that energy leaving my leg later that night when I stood out to ground. Now, the whole week, we kept hearing little whispers around the room saying that we were going to have some 5-hour meditation that started at 4 a.m. at some time during the week. And I was trying to figure it out because I'm Ubering there. I'm trying to figure out what day it was. I don't know until the day comes, until the night before, and he tells us. But like the suspense was building all week of like, what is this 5-hour meditation that we're going to be doing at 4 a.m? Day 6 was that day. I wake up at 3 a.m, and my friend who I'm staying with was such a sweetheart. She actually ended up driving me to there because I was worried that the Uber wasn't going to get there in time. And if you're late to the meditation, you can't get into the room. Like, they don't allow disturbances. And so I needed to make sure I was on time for this unknown 4 a.m. meditation that lasted exactly 4 hours and 44 minutes. And so we're in this meditation, and we go to activate the pineal gland again. Activate, lay down, sit back up, activate, lay down. Do this kind of type breath to like over-oxygenate our body. Get back up, pineal gland, get back down. And it was just that for like 5 hours. And finally, I start to have like legit experiences. And at first, I just start to see shapes, right? In my mind's eye, I just start to see shapes, and they're starting to move. And then these shapes started to turn into movies. And I start to see some really interesting things. And in the last, I'll just call them movie, or I don't know what you would call them, but I'm just going to call them a movie. In the last movie that I saw in my mind's eye, I see like the Teletubby baby son. Like, you know, if you've ever watched the Teletubbies growing up, for me in my childhood, that was like our show. Like Teletubby, if you just Google it, right? Like the baby sun, like the sun is like a baby's face. I just see like that come up in the sky, and it looks down on me, and it's like, you're so blessed, you're so loved. And I'm like feeling the love. I'm like, yes, I am. And then the Teletubby baby sun goes down, and then up comes this like cartoony looking crescent moon in the sky, and it's nighttime. And the moonlight of the crescent moon is shining onto this like endless sparkling ocean water. And I'm like, ooh, and I feel like the breeze, and then whoosh, I get dropped down into the ocean water, deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And I start to get nervous. because I'm like, whoa, I'm going really deep and it's starting to get really dark in here. And I just remember because all throughout the week, Dr. Joe Dispenza just kept repeating during our meditations was trust the unknown, trust the unknown. And so I was like, you know what? I trust the unknown. Like, I'm going to trust whatever I'm getting sucked into. And so immediately my angst kind of went away and I feel better. And I get to the bottom of the ocean and it's like this dark navy blue. And I see what I'll just describe as looking like a kingdom in the distance. Like just the outline, like black outline of this kingdom. And then to my left, I see about 3 to 5 Arcturians of these blue beings that I saw before in my breathwork session, and just like Ethan was describing. And I can't see their faces. It's like this movie, I'm seeing things a little fuzzy. I don't see things as clearly when I get like intuitive visions. Like I'm seeing things a little fuzzy. And my theory of why I was seeing things fuzzy through my pineal gland was I feel like your intuition channel and your pineal gland channel, because your pineal gland, when it's activated, it's like a radio, what do you call them? Like a radio tower. And it acts like a radio tower to like your thoughts, right? So it sends out these signals. And my theory of why this was coming across fuzzy, but I get such clear and vivid intuitive visions, is I feel like the pineal gland is a different channel than your intuition. And I hadn't yet really practiced this muscle of receiving information from this pineal gland, from this radio tower, but I've practiced very frequently receiving intuitive messages. So anyway, it's fuzzy. I can't see their faces, but I can see about 3 to 5 of these beings, and they look long and stick-like with very long limbs. They're not scary though. I felt safe in their presence. And all of them just point me to this cave that's even farther to the left and way out in the distance. And I'm looking at that cave and I'm looking at them and I'm shaking my head. I'm like, I don't want to go in there. It looks dark in there. Like, it's already really dark down here. And they basically nod their head yes, like, go in. And I remind myself of the same saying that I just reminded myself prior. And I said, okay, I'm going to trust the unknown. I'm going to trust it. So I walk into this cave, and it takes quite a while to get in there, actually. And then I'm looking from now a third person point of view, and I see my body, my human Sabrina body, come out of the top of the cave, like in laying down, but like my chest is pulled up. And there's like, it looks like a star is where my heart is. And it's just glowing. And it looks like it's pulling my whole body up as I'm like, my body looks like lifeless almost in the sky, or I guess in the water. And it floats me down onto what looks like a surgical table. And the same star light energy that I see coming out of my heart starts to swirl around my feet at first. And it's like whoosh, 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 whoosh. And it's swirling around my feet, swirling around my calves and my thighs and all the way up my body. And I see myself from my feet to my head turn into one of these blue beings. And I get off the surgical table, and as an Arcturian now, I look and I see what I know as my family, my Arcturian family. And it looked like I had like 3 to 4 kids. And for a split second, I felt this like wave or this rush of emotion of the love that I had for my family there. And I even like said it out loud because it caught me off guard. And I was like, oh, because I just felt so much love in that moment looking at my family. And then whoosh, it went away. And I was like, wow, like I just felt a lot of emotion right there. And we get up and we get out of the meditation, and I was thinking to myself, did I just have a blue being experience? Did I just see that I'm one of them? And I end up telling the group of friends that I met there, and I told Ethan, and Ethan's like, I knew it. I knew you were one of them. I felt when I first met you, because I actually ended up meeting him on day 1. He was sitting in my row and I didn't even notice it, and I was talking to them, and he said, when I first met you on day 1, I saw this energy in your eyes, and I said, there's something important about her. And he said, I knew you were one of them. And so I'm just trying to process what I just experienced in that. And that 5-hour meditation did not feel like 5 hours. So we eat our breakfast, we listen to more teachings, get back into the ballroom. And before we go on our next break, we get told that we're about to do what's called a box shifting meditation. And he said this is only going to be a 30-minute meditation. So I'm thinking, okay, all of these meditations that we've been doing were like at least an hour and a half, 2 hours. 30 minutes won't be too crazy, right? Right. I thought it wouldn't be that crazy. In this meditation, he basically explains how our consciousness is basically entering the quantum, which we do multiple times throughout the week, but in this specific one, we are having our consciousness enter the quantum space, enter a new reality, and we are bringing our body to that new reality. So we're basically quantum leaping. I go into and I tap into this reality, and I jump into this reality. I bring my body with me, and I felt this frequency that was so strong. It took over my whole body. And we get out of the meditation, and I notice myself in that strong frequency. And then as I open my eyes and we get out to go, we get out to go on lunch break, actually. And so I notice for myself, as I open my eyes and I try to get up to go to lunch, my frequency starts to shift back to my old state. And I'm like, wait, like I want to stay in this new frequency. I want to have this quantum leap. And it keeps shifting every time I move. So I told myself, I was like, I'm determined to hold this frequency. I am not going to get up out of my chair. I'm not going to go to lunch until I feel like I have secured this frequency enough for me to hold it. And so I sit there, everybody goes off to lunch, and I'm sitting there, and eventually I harness it enough to where I feel comfortable starting to walk. So I get up, I start walking, and I get to this water fountain to fill my water bottle, and I feel this energy start to drift again. And I'm like, no, like I'm pulling over, I'm gonna keep practicing to hold it again. Like I'm going to hold on to this energetic frequency. Like I'm going to have this quantum leap. And I'm pulled over next to the water fountain after filling my water, and my eyes are open as I'm just focusing on this frequency and pulling my body into it and opening my heart to it and really engulfing myself in this frequency. And next thing you know, my body, my arms, my legs start to tremble, start to vibrate, start to shake. And I'm just letting it happen as everybody's still in masses. Some of the 2,000 other people were still walking their way to lunch, and I'm pulled over to the side, seeing them all pass. I'm just letting it happen. And I'm like, whatever. People have seen crazier things than a girl shaking, attuning herself to a new frequency. And then I feel like as my body's shaking and trembling, I feel whoosh. And it's like, I almost lose complete balance in my legs. I almost fall completely, almost like collapse. And I get very lightheaded. I thought I was going to pass out for a second. And my body's still trembling. And I realized that my body was attuning to this new frequency. And so I'm like, well, this is kind of cool. Like I felt my body shaking the other night, but now it's like, we just had this quantum leap experience, and I feel my nervous system, my body physically shaking and attuning to this new frequency. So I knew things were happening there. And so I eventually, as I'm shaking, as I'm trembling, I stand over the convention center lobby, and I'm looking at these. I'm on the second or third floor. I'm on the third floor looking at the second floor, and I'm looking at these long hanging light structures that are in these geometric looking shapes. And I'm staring at these, kind of getting lost in these geometric shape light fixtures as I'm trying to just stabilize my body and also let it do its thing. I'm standing there for a minute. I'm standing there getting lost in these geometric shapes for a minute. And as I'm standing there, I can't help but to notice this other man who is coming up the escalator, coming up to the third floor, obviously from the event. And he is trembling and vibrating and shaking just as bad as Ethan was the day before. You know how I said Ethan was like shaking so bad he could barely stand, he could barely talk? This man coming up on the escalator, he had a smile across his face from ear to ear and just nonstop visceral shaking. And it was like, I don't think I've ever seen a man smile bigger than I saw him smiling as his body is uncontrollably shaking. And I'm just thinking in my head, like, this is so crazy. Like, the work we're doing here is so crazy. Like, it's just normal for our nervous systems to be attuning to these high vibrational frequencies and for us to just feel like high off life. Like, what even is this? Where even am I? Like, where have these teachings been all of my life? Where have these experiences been all of my life? Like, it was just so crazy. And I walk over. I finally get to lunch and I think we're like having salad that day. Like, there is salad available, and I grab the utensil to pick up the salad, and my whole arm is shaking with the utensil, and salad's like flopping out of the spoon that's holding it. And I put the spoon down and I put my arms back down on my body. I look at the man behind me and I'm like, I just like give him like a half smile, like, sorry, I'm taking a minute. I look back at the salad, my arm's shaking, I pick up the spoon again, salad's flopping everywhere, I put it back down, put my arms by my side, take a deep breath, and I'm like, okay, like, we're gonna get through this, we're gonna put the salad on the plate. I go again, and salad's flopping everywhere, and I'm like, whatever, I just put it on my plate. Like, I am still shaking. And so I eat lunch, I basically keep to myself, I'm just trying to get myself together, and we get back in from break, and this woman to my right, she was sitting next to my right that whole day. And she's this maybe young 30s, very attractive, blonde looking woman. And she's from Alabama. She has this fat diamond ring on her finger, very put together. Her husband was sitting there next to her. And she tells me that she said, you know what just happened in that last meditation that we did, that like 30-minute meditation? I was like, girl, tell me. She said she astral traveled all the way back to her home in Alabama. And she said that she saw her garage, and she stopped in front of her garage and thought, like, okay, I'm at my garage now. How do I get in here? And her thought process, she goes, well, why don't I just go through it? She said she astral traveled through her garage, went into her home. She saw her dog sitter. She said she saw her dog. She said she saw them sitting by the fire pit. She saw the cleaners going through the house. And she said that when we got out during lunch, the dog sitter texted her a picture of her and the dog sitting by the fire pit, like straight confirmation that they were right there during that same time. And she texted the dog sitter and asked her, are the cleaners there? And the dog sitter said yes. I was just sitting with her in that moment, and she's looking at me straight into my soul, and she's like, I just astral traveled to my home, and they just confirmed everything that I just saw. And then she pulls up her sleeve, right? This woman, this blonde Alabama woman, pulls up her sleeve, and she goes, look at my skin. And I'm like, what am I looking at? And she said, I had eczema breaking out all over my arm, all over my back. She pulled up her shirt and her back. She said, I don't have eczema. She came to the event with her skin broken out with eczema. And there was not even a scar, not a sign that she had it. This just goes to show some of the intense and immediate and mind-blowing healings that were going on there. Completely disappeared as if she were in a brand new body. So anyway, the day goes on, and Dr. Joe has his research team, different people from his research team and different scientists coming on stage, speaking of the different data that they have, of the evidence of these practices and how they've been able to heal so many different people with so many different medical conditions, which was absolutely incredible to tune into the active studies that they're holding and the different data that they're discovering. Also, I just want to say something funny. That Alabama woman was telling me, she said that she had a friend there that was in the row behind us, and during that pineal gland activation earlier that day, she said that her friend thought that she was on fire, so she was like freaking out. And apparently Dr. Joe like got off stage and he was walking around the audience as we're deep into meditation, and he's walking around to like check in on us and like make sure everybody's doing everything right. And this Alabama girl said that her friend who was in the row behind us thought she was on fire and lifted up her eye mask to look at her husband to make sure that she was okay. And she said that Dr. Joe was right in front of her face at that time. And because he kept telling us, like, don't disturb anyone, stay in the meditative state. Like, if your body is trying to tell you that you're too thirsty or that you're too tired or that you're nauseous, like, basically have your mind overcome your body. And he's in her face, and she says that he shakes his finger like no, and he like motions to put her mask back down, and she put her mask back down. But I just thought that was the funniest thing, so I had to share that. But we go back into the teachings, having the researchers on stage, and now we go into our last meditation, which is another coherence healing. And in this meditation itself, we prep outside of the ballroom as a Heelys are getting ready and prepared inside. And I'm guided, and there ends up being 8 of us around this Heely. And this one was a little harder for my mind to relax. I was so excited, and I was like, yeah, I've already done this one. I had this like, let's fucking go type energy. And I realized quickly that was not the right energy to be in a meditative state. I needed to relax my mind more. So I was doing my best, but the 8 of us were around this Healy, and it was interesting. This man who was sitting like diagonal from me, who was working to send healing energy to the Healy, this woman who I had not met there. And I can hear him during the meditation. My eyes are closed, but I can hear him shaking and his chair shaking. And then I hear like this loud like thump. And when we open our eyes and get out of the meditation to come back, he's out of his chair, and he's like, tears were streaming down his face. And he's like, guys, I just shocked myself out of my seat. And it was funny because he said that earlier that day at lunch. I ran into, I was sitting at a table with this man who probably in his 50s. And he said that this man who I met at lunch, he said that he had a stroke, and it caused his whole left side of his body to go numb. He had so much, he had this pinched nerve in his hip that was causing so much pain in his leg where he couldn't walk. And so he was in a wheelchair, and he went to a week-long Dr. Joe event like a few months prior. It was recent. And he said at the event, he was a Healy, and he experienced so much healing energy that he said it felt like he was being zapped with like electricity. And he said it was being like, zapped back and forth between him and one of the healers. And he said that the girl kept like, it looked like she was getting like shocked, like electrified, and then it would zap back to him and zap back to her, and it was like zap, 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 and they were both just like shaking. And when he described that, and then I see this man later that day, and he just says, I just shocked myself out of my seat. I was just like, wow, like, it's just, the energy is so powerful. And it's not, when I say like, it's shocked, like, it's not painful. It's like a burst of energy, but it's not painful. Like, if anything, it feels like a bliss, like a shock of bliss is the best way I could describe it. But it's just like continuing to really open my mind and blow my mind at how powerful human beings are, at our capabilities, I'm just mind blown at our potential to be able to channel and harness such strong and powerful and beautiful energies and physically heal ourselves and other people in an instant. And it's just so incredible to experience and to see and to talk to so many people who had experienced things. And he said, the man who I had met at lunch, who experienced the zap, zap, zap at a previous retreat, he said that when he got out of that retreat, he could finally walk again. He said he went, I think, a few years without being able to walk after his stroke. And since that retreat a few months prior, he was able to walk. And he said, I still don't have all my feeling back on my left side. And so that's why I'm here in this retreat, to see if I can heal myself completely. And again, he looked like maybe in his 50s, just like a regular dad looking guy. I was like, wow. So end of the day, I walk back through the jungle in the atrium, get the Uber, get to my friend's place, tell her everything about it. And day 6 was a good 15-hour day just at the event, not even counting the travel time. And I'm feeling so much energy when I get home. It's, again, hard for me to even sleep. Day 7 comes, and I get up super early, so sleep deprived. And this is a Saturday. We start a meditation right at 6 a.m., I believe. And I remember him describing this meditation at the end of the day prior and describing what we're going to be doing. But honestly, I was so tired. I don't know if he explained it and I was just out of it. I was just zoned out when he was explaining it. But it worked out that I didn't really know what to expect, because I was thinking before we started this meditation, I'm not even sure the intention behind this, because he was telling us that we're going to be calling in this electric energy into our body, into our different energy centers. And I was thinking in my head before we even started, like, what are we even doing this for again? Why are we calling electric energy into our bodies? Like, what is this doing? And I'm so tired, I don't even care. And I remember him specifically saying, if you go all in on this, because before every meditation, he would have us tell the person next to us, I am going 100% in. I'm going all in to this meditation, which was so powerful in making sure that all of our energy was present and having those constant reminders. And he said before this specific meditation, if you go all into this could change your life. And I remember it's that skeptical part of me. I remember having a thought in my mind come up, could this really change my life? I don't even know what we're doing here. And we start this meditation. It's a 30-minute indoor meditation that we start inside. And then we move outside for the second part of it. And it's a walking meditation for the next, a little over an hour. So we lay down, we do this electric meditation for about 30 minutes inside. We call it into the different energy centers of our body. And I am so tired. I am just trying to stay awake at this point. And I hear other people, and this is day 7, man. This is day 7. Everybody is so deep in their meditative states. People are going off like popcorn all over the ballroom, all having experiences everywhere. And I'm just trying to stay awake. Okay. I'm laying down and I'm like, okay, stay awake, keep my energy, focus on my energy, focus on what we're doing. And I felt my legs tremble a little bit near the end of it, but I knew that I was not having the same spiritual experiences as other people around me. And I was okay with that. I was like, you know what? I'm doing the best I can. And I know that I'm doing the best I can. And I'm going to be proud of my efforts. So then we move to the outside portion. And this is where it gets crazy for me. We start off standing up with our eyes closed. And we get into a meditative state. And again, I have my headphones on. It's a pre-recorded Dr. Joe meditation. And I'm listening to this. And we again start to call in this electric energy into our different energy centers. And yes, you could also call these chakras, but it's more so like the science behind it is like these nerve clusters that are like brains to our different organ centers throughout our body. So I'm standing there at the beginning of the walking portion of the meditation outside of Gaylord Resort and calling in this electric energy into energy center 1, which would be your root chakra. And I feel my legs start trembling and shaking. And I'm like, oh, okay, like I'm feeling it. And then we call it into energy center 2. And the trembling, the vibrating of my body kicks up a notch. And I'm like, whoa, like I'm feeling it kind of a lot. And then we call it into energy center 3. And it grows even more. And we call it into energy center 4. And my torso starts to really shake now. And we call it into energy center 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. And 8 is the energy center that is like above our head. It's connected to all that is. And my entire body, my hands, my fingers, my feet, my head, viscerally shaking like crazy. And me and my mind, I'm like, my mind is like still. My mind is clear. I feel safe. I surprisingly feel very calm. I have a couple like alarming thoughts come in my head of like, I'm nervous. I'm about to fall over because my feet keep popping off the ground. I was like genuinely a little nervous that I was about to fall over. And I had one of the employees, I'm sure, saw me and put her hand up on my arm. And I think it was just a nice gesture of like, hey, like I'm here if you need me. And it was nice. And I put my hand on her hand as best as I could with me shaking so much. And it was nice just to have someone there of like, hey, I'm right here. Because I was getting a little nervous because my feet kept popping off the ground. And so then I'm still listening to the meditation. Dr. Joe's voice is still in my ears and I'm shaking. And he's like, okay, like start walking. And I'm like, I'm going to have to get this shaking under control if I have to walk. And so I start walking and the energy, this electric energy just starts to, it's still there, but it just settles in my body. And at this point, I'm like, wow. I felt electric. I felt like I was levitating, like I was floating. And I look up and I'm in this deep meditative state and I know my brainwaves are looking good. Okay. And when you get dizzy and you like put your head upside down and then bring it back up and you start to see like these almost like stars in the sky. That's what I saw as I was just walking on the course. There's like this path that we follow through the walking meditation. So we stay within our realm. But as I'm walking on this path, I see these stars in the sky and I see them all moving. And I'm like, I know I didn't flip my head upside down. I know I didn't do a cartwheel to like ignite me seeing this. And they just stayed there. And I felt like I was tapping into, I felt like my body was in such a high vibrational frequency that I was able to see different energetic frequencies. It's a little hard to put into words, but I'm seeing this in the sky and I just start bawling my eyes out because I felt like I was this just beautiful energetic state. Beautiful energy. And I was like, wow. And I'm just bawling my eyes out like, wow. feeling light as ever, feeling unlimited, feeling free as ever. And the meditation keeps going and I'm continuing to walk and I'm feeling so good. And next thing you know, I hear on the audio of the meditation, Dr. Joe says to stop, because there were certain points of the meditation where you would walk and then you'd have to stop. Sometimes you'd have to lay down, stand back up again, start walking again. And he tells us to stop. So I pull over and I'm standing in front of the lake by the resort. And I notice as I'm walking over to this place that's a little out of the way from everyone else who's walking, so I'm not in anyone's way. I noticed this younger boy who's there, and there were a few younger kids there. I think the youngest I saw was like 16 years old. There were younger people there brought by their parents or who were just genuinely interested. Not too many. I'd say maybe like 20 or so out of the like 2,000. And I saw this younger boy who maybe looked like 18 or 19 years old. And he looked like maybe his mom dragged him there or something. But you could tell that he was in beta brainwave state. Like he was in his logical, conscious thinking mind. He was not in a meditative state. And he's looking around at everybody, like having this crazy look on his face, like, what are these people doing? That's the expression that this boy has on his face. And I pull off and I know I'm going to land right next to him because I have to pull over and I have to stop. And I'm like, this young boy is looking at these people having this, what the hell are these people doing type look on his face. And he's about to see a show because I know when I get to a stopping point, I know what my body's about to start doing. And so we pull over and my eyes are shut and we invite the electric energy back into my body. And it's the same thing as before. I am viscerally shaking. My entire body is just going crazy. And this time I can't stand. This time I literally collapsed on my knees, on my feet, on my knees, on the ground. And I'm like in grassy area by the lake at this point, and I'm shaking as I'm like kneeling on the ground. It was just so crazy. And I'm just thinking like this boy is getting a show, but the guided meditation ends up having us get back up and continue walking. And I feel like even better than before, which I'm like, how could you even feel better than that? But I felt even better as before in the second part of the walking meditation. And I'm literally feeling like, and I see the trees behind the lake. And I know that when I do deeper inner healing sessions, I feel like my vision gets crisper. Like I feel like my vision gets better. Like my eyesight gets better physically. Like my senses feel more, like in tune, intact, like my senses heighten after I do healing practices. And my clients, I have a business, I have some private clients, and I'll take some of my clients through deeper inner healing practices at times when we feel called to, and they'll say the same things. We get out of healing meditations and they say, oh my God, like I'm looking around my bedroom and I feel like I'm seeing things clearer. I feel like I'm hearing things clearer. So I knew this was a thing. As I'm walking, mid-walk in the meditation, my eyes are open and I see this happen in real time. I'm looking at the trees from behind the lake or by the lake, and I see the trees, and it just crisps. Everything just crisps. And I feel like I have, I'm just telling you what I experienced. I feel like I have supervision. I can see every detail on every leaf and looking at every little twig and looking at every blade of grass and looking so far out in the sky. And I'm just like, whoa, like, whoa is how I'm feeling. And I am feeling like unlimited, like free as ever. And it was just such a potent, incredible energy that took over my entire body. And I will say after that meditation, I am forever changed. I am forever changed. And the meditation ends up ending, and we walk to go to breakfast, and we're waiting, and we go and get breakfast, and I get the food and I sit at the table, and I am still shaking, like my legs. I'm trying to eat breakfast, or I'm eating breakfast. I'm eating my eggs with my hot sauce, and my legs under the table are still like shaking, like moving up and down. And I'm looking at the people at the table, and we're all just so comfortable with each other. And I hadn't met any of the people at the table that I was sitting at yet before. And everybody's like, how is the meditation for you? How is it for you? And I'm like, man, it was so great, but I can't get my legs to stop shaking. And there were these two women that were there that lived in Miami, and they both spoke Spanish. They both spoke English too. But I was talking to them both and they were like, girl, it's okay. Just let it happen. Like it'll fade away at some point, but just like, let it happen. And they made me feel a little more comfortable about it because I was feeling like, what the hell, And so that was that. And day 7, Saturday, was a half day. It wasn't like a full day. And so instead of 3 or 4 meditations, we do just the 2. Then we do the electric body, and then we go into our last coherence healing session. And so we go into the healing session, and we're standing outside of the ballroom. Healers are getting ready inside. We're getting into our brainwave state, our energetic state. We're balancing ourselves out. And you know how Dr. Joe Dispenza's voice, like I said before, would say, activate the healer in you before we went into the meditations. I was thinking, since I apparently saw from this, going into this different dimension, I apparently saw that I am one of these Arcturians, one of these blue beings. And if these blue beings are an extremely healing species, why don't I activate the Arcturian in me? So I say in my head, instead of the healer, I go, I activate the Arcturian in me. And when I say that, my mind just goes, whoa. And my mind is just very clear after that. I'm standing up absolutely straight, but relaxed. I'm relaxing my body, and my intuition, by the end of this week, like I already had a very strong connection to my intuition. By the end of this week, my intuition is speaking to me in pure sentence form. Like when I tell you, I went to breakfast on like day 6, and I went to go like grab, my intuition said, oh, remember to grab your eye mask for your next meditation. And I was like, oh, okay. And because we kept some of our stuff in like a separate room. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go to this room, grab my eye mask. Like, thanks, intuition, for reminding me. And then I go to grab my jacket, and my intuition says, oh, you won't need that. It literally says it in like pure like sentence form. It says, you won't need that. And I'm like, I kind of want to bring it. Like, it's usually cold in the dining room. Like, I kind of want to bring it. And it says like in this dialogue, it's like, well, you can take it if you want. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take it. I did not end up needing it. It was warm in the dining room. So anyway, my intuition is speaking in pure sentence form at this point. And I have never heard it this clearly in my life, so consistently. And my intuition, as we are walking into the ballroom where the Heelys are at, it's speaking to me and it's saying, go here, go right, go in this line. Because we're all filing, all the rest of us are filing into the ballroom. And saying, go in this line, go here, let this woman direct you, go there. And so I'm being guided to exactly where I'm meant to be at. And I sit down and I see one of the women who were sitting at the breakfast table sitting across from me. And I just smiled at her because I was like, oh, what's up, girl? Like, we just met. And because a lot of times you get placed with a group that you've never met before. Like I said, so many people are there. And we start the healing session, and there's only 6 of us. And the woman who was sitting across from me, she actually tried to yell at one of the employees, not yell, but wave at one of the employees and let them know that we only had 6 and not 8. And the employee was like, it's fine. And I thought to myself, like, I have this feeling that like, it's good. Like the 6 of us are good. Like this is going to be a good crew. So we tap into, Dr. Joe guides us through a meditation of tapping into this state again. We direct this healing energy towards the healer, or towards the Healy. And she's laying down, and I can't tell who she is. She has an eye mask on and her blanket all the way up to her face. And so I'm sending this healing energy, sending it. It's taking over my body. I'm viscerally shaking, of course. And I peek my eyes open, and the girl across from me that I met from breakfast, she's viscerally shaking as well. And so I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, at least I'm not the only one. And I'm just letting it happen. And I'm in this state. I'm in this meditative state. And my mind is so clear, so quiet, so peaceful. And what I see next in my mind's eye, as I see this blue glowing being, like, when you see like a movie and someone has an out-of-body experience and you see like their spirit coming out of their body, that's kind of what I saw. And I didn't admit this for like the first however long afterwards, because I was like questioning myself, like, did I really just see this? But this is what I saw. A blue being like come out of my body in that way, and it was glowing. And like I said, I'm seeing it in like fuzzy, but it kneels down in front of the Healy, and it just kneels down in front of her and it stays there for a while. And then to the left of her, it goes to lay down next to her, head to head, toe to toe, but lay down to the side of her. And then it looks like it just flips over into her. And it looks like it dissolves into her, this blue being. And at the same time, I see these two other blue beings. And I have to say, okay, before this last healing session, Dr. Joe, before we got into our last coherence healing session, he said, it's not uncommon for people to experience other dimensional beings come in to assist with the healing. And at this point, I'm like, nothing is crazy at this point. I feel like I've seen it all. And I'm just like, okay. And he ends up bringing or showing this testimonial after testimonial video on the screen of different people talking about how they were in a healing session and saw some type of being come in, or like an angel looking type come in, or just some type of being that is not human come in and help them heal, like go in and fix their gut issues that they didn't realize they had, or put their shoulder back in their socket, or like heal like the ligament in their knee. And it was like testimonial after testimonial after testimonial of these different people experiencing these healings assisted by these different beings. And so we see that before we get into the coherence healing. And so at the same time that I'm seeing this glowing blue being dissolve into the Healy's body, I see these two other beings standing behind her, and they're not glowing, but they're also blue beings. And one of them points to me and says, "Tell her that she's healed." And I look at this blue being, and I'm like, in my mind's eye, I'm like shaking my head. I'm like, I'm not going to be the one telling. This is like when my ego comes in, my logical mind comes in, and I'm like, I am not going to tell this woman that she's healed. And mainly it was because of my own discomfort, because I was like, one, I don't know this woman. This woman doesn't know me. I'm not comfortable with her. And also, who am I to say this? Like, what if, God forbid, it's not true? Like, I don't want to tell her this. And so I'm shaking my head, and I'm like telepathically telling this being, no, I don't want to do this. And they are telepathically telling me and nodding their head yes. And they're saying, yes, tell her. So I'm going in a whole mental battle in my mind. And I'm thinking, if this Healy ends up hanging out with us and she ends up talking to us after we get out of the meditation, I might tell her a little bit. And then I'm thinking, if she ends up just giving us a quick hug, then I'm going to give her a quick hug, and I'm going to walk out of the ballroom and not say a word, because I'm like uncomfortable to say this, to tell this random woman that apparently she's healed. So we get out of the healing meditation, and I see the Healy lift her eye mask. And I realize that it's the other woman that I met at breakfast. And it was so synchronistic because I felt comfortable with her. She was one of the ones who was telling me, like, girl, like, it's okay. It's no big deal. Your legs are shaking under the table as you're eating breakfast. Like, you're good. And we ended up exchanging Instagrams and everything at breakfast. And I was like, oh my God, like, I feel like strangely comfortable enough to tell her this, even though I still don't necessarily want to. I feel way more comfortable telling her this rather than some random woman that I haven't met yet. And so she gives she starts to give everyone hugs. And so I start just laughing when I see her lift her eye mask, because I'm like, this is so synchronistic. And she goes around and she starts to give everyone hugs. And she gets to me, and I'm still feeling resistant. I'm still feeling like I don't necessarily want to tell her, but I think I'm going to tell her. And as I'm hugging her, I am in her ear and I say, they wanted me to tell you that you're healed. And she pulls me off of her and she's like, what? What did you say? And I look at her in the eyes and I say, they wanted me to tell you that you're healed. And you can almost like hear it in my voice of like, I still don't necessarily want to tell you this, but they told me to tell you. Okay. They told me to tell you. And she pulls me like into her and into like this tight hug. And she starts bawling and I start bawling my eyes out, and we're just bawling our eyes out together. And at the same time, across the ballroom, there was this woman who was in a wheelchair the entire time. Now, I don't know what her condition was. I just know that I saw her multiple times, a few times in passing during the retreat. And I noticed that during the walking meditations, she had somebody wheeling her across the path because she couldn't walk. She was wheelchair bound. And at the same time, me and the Healy are bawling in each other's arms. I see this woman who was in her wheelchair stand up and sprint across the ballroom. This woman who was wheelchair bound gets up and sprints across the ballroom. Everybody is cheering, everybody's screaming, everybody's going off at the same time. There's another woman on the other side of the ballroom. And I don't know her condition, but she looked like her head was shaved. It looked like she may have had cancer and was going through chemo. And I just see her get up and she just starts doing jumping jacks. You can tell that she's feeling good. And at the same time, I'm seeing this happening and everybody's screaming, everybody's cheering, and me and the Healy are bawling in each other's arms. The Healy pulls me away from her and she looks at me, right? Because I just told her, these blue beings told me to tell you that you're healed. And she lifts up off of me and she says, they told me to. When I tell you, I looked at her with such like a what? Like it was already kind of a disbelief in me. Like I was already double guessing in my head. Am I seeing this? Is this happening? Should I really be even saying this? Like what? And the fact that she said, they told me to, I was like, you can't explain this. Like this is crazy insane. Crazy insane. And this week, my mind has been blown so many more times than I could even count. And this week had made me understand on even deeper visceral levels how much more to life there is than what meets the eye. And it has inspired me to continue to live 1 foot in the quantum and 1 foot in the real world, so that I don't ever waste my days in the mundane, in the frustration and the impatience, and instead decide to live a life full of mystical, synchronistic experiences, not by chance, but by choice. So there you have it, my full disclosure on my spiritual experiences at this week-long retreat. And I will never be the same person that I was before. Thank you for getting to the end of this podcast. If you loved this episode, if you like this podcast, the best way to support is to right now leave a 5-star review on your favorite thing about this podcast and why. A little bit of love goes a long way, and I appreciate every ounce of it so that more people are able to tune in. Thank you for your support, and stay tuned for more eye-opening episodes.